Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk this week. The topic is everything happens, you decide the reason. And I was writing about why I so dislike the phrase everything happens for a reason. It's in the same category as sayings like things don't happen to you, they happen for you, or rejection is protection, like all these sort of like really catchy, little phrases that sound great, but if someone is really suffering, a little phrase like that can be incredibly alienating. And I've been in the wellness world for 30 years. I've been teaching yoga for a long time. And so my social media feeds are filled with those kinds of sayings. And, it can sort of veer into that realm of toxic positivity where you're being asked to put everything in your gratitude column. And that too can be really alienating for people. And when I see that happening, I was drawn toward yoga and meditation because I was in real need of healing. I really needed to find a new way to be living my life that felt better and that helped me to deal with a lot of depression and anxiety, all these things that I felt coming out of my childhood. And when I headed out into the world and began my own adult relationships, a lot of that stuff came to the surface, and I was playing out these old patterns and old dynamics in my present and trying to get a different outcome. And when I started practicing yoga, I really didn't know or understand or realize that there was a whole philosophy happening underneath the poses. I just had 12 years of ballet under my belt, and I was looking for something that would give me that level of intensity physically. And I wandered into an advanced yoga class on purpose, accidentally on purpose, thinking that yoga was going to be too easy for me and that it was basically stretching on the floor. And then I found myself in this room full of people who appeared to be levitating. That's what it looks like when you walk into an advanced yoga class and you've never done yoga before. It just looks like people are hovering and breathing, and they look euphoric. You're kind of like, wait, down dog is agony. What is happening right now? So I was really taken by that, the physical part of it first. And only after several months did I realize, wow, I'm really starting to feel better in my life. I'm feeling a lot less anxious. I'm feeling steadier. I'm not really succumbing to these bouts of depression, and I'm not second guessing myself as much. And I'm not I'm not in this state of worrying all the time. I'm feeling a lot more peace than I have before. And I started to realize it was because I was practicing, going to yoga 6 days a week. And so I signed up for some philosophy courses that were being offered so I could understand a little bit more like what was happening. But 30 years later, what I can tell you is that like any spiritual, you have to really watch when you are part of a spiritual community. You start to learn the hard way that people love a guru. People want answers, and they want someone to show the way and some set of rules to follow that will make life easier. And there are those in any spiritual practice. If you boil it down, there's going to be something like the 10 commandments. In yoga it's the yama and niyama, but like any spiritual practice, if you really get to the heart of it, is going to be know yourself. I mean, that's a key element to just finding peace in your life, is understanding yourself. Like, what is driving me? What's stopping me? What's scaring me? What's making me doubt myself or doubt my worth? Or, got to know yourself. And part of the yoga practice certainly is self-study. But any spiritual practice is going to have that component. And then there's the other stuff, like you're trying to walk through the world in a gentle and peaceful way and do no harm. And, you want to try to be a good neighbor, and you want to practice kindness and compassion, and you want to be paying attention as you're moving through the day and looking for the beauty that is absolutely around you. So there are a lot of beautiful things about a spiritual practice, but where things can get a little bit funky is when the rules become really rigid and or people are being asked to contort themselves into a pretzel, in order to make things all fit into the gratitude file. There are things that are going to happen in life that you do not have to put in your thank you column. You do not have to, if you have suffered an inconceivable loss, you don't have to somehow cram that into your gratitude folder. You're allowed to be heartbroken and bereft, and it is okay for certain things to never make sense, and yet, to find a way to keep living and to hopefully experience joy again. So part of what happens is this real desire we have to make things make sense. If I'm a good person, nothing bad will happen to me, right? That's like what we hope. If I'm a really good person, then it's kind of like all of my good deeds, it's like I'm putting them into it's like a bank, right? I'm putting my good deeds into an account, and that account is accruing interest, and that interest is protecting me from anything awful that might happen. Well, if you look around the world on any day, any hour, any minute, you're going to see that it doesn't work like that. Really heartbreaking and horrendous things happen to beautiful, loving, kind-hearted people all the time. And that's just how it is. And so this desire that we have to make it make sense can really create some cognitive dissonance and some alienation, some mental contortion, mental gymnastics in order to try to push everything into that sort of like, the scales of justice, to kind of try to even those out. And it doesn't, it's going to make you ultimately sick if you try to force yourself into that cause and effect sort of scenario. In the yoga practice, the way that it is explained in yogic philosophy, traditional yogic philosophy, is that there is reincarnation, and that we have as many lifetimes as we need to help our souls to evolve. And so, if I don't get everything right in this lifetime and I don't learn all the lessons I need to learn for my soul to evolve, then it's okay, because when I die, I can come back again and be in a different body, in a different family, and maybe a different part of the world, and I can try it again. And I'm likely to run into the most important souls in my life. I'm probably going to travel with those souls again some way or somehow. I'll run into those people. And this is why sometimes when you meet someone and they feel like, it feels like you know them, it's because you've known them before. You've known them in a past life. And when you arrive here, again, I'm just sharing with you sort of traditional yogic philosophy. I'm not saying I believe this. I'm saying this is what is presented as the explanation for why things are the way they are, and why awful, painful things can happen to good people sometimes, is because you are arriving with karmic debt. whatever lessons your soul didn't get in the last life, that's what's happening. And if something tragic befalls you, it's because that is what your soul needed to evolve. Okay. So what I was saying is that I actually love that. And I would love for that to be true. I would love for that to be the case, that we get to like come back, and that means mistakes are okay. It means we don't have to get everything right in this lifetime. We don't have to figure it all out. And we get to, it makes death less scary. It means it's not, we're coming back again. We're going to run into the people, the souls who mean the most to us again. It's a very comforting philosophy that I would love to be true, but I don't know that it's true. I don't know. I can't say with, any, I can't prove that. I don't know that. And I am the kind of person, and this is just me. For you, you may have your own spiritual practices or your own religion that really speaks to you and lights you up and it all makes sense. That's beautiful. I'm not, casting aspersions or making any judgments on any of it. I think that's wonderful. And for me, what I think is, as long as your spiritual practice is not hurting anyone else or infringing on anybody else's rights, it's beautiful. But I'm just talking about me personally. I am not someone who can just take things on blind faith. I really need to know that something is true in order for it to be comforting. Otherwise, it's just an idea or a set of ideas that I'm sort of like, holding on to and hoping. And so while I take comfort in those ideas and I hope that they're true, I don't know that they're true. So I'm not going to live my life and make life decisions based on something that may or may not be true that I won't know until I exhale for the final time. That's just my personality. One of the reasons that I get so just disheartened and sad and concerned when I see people posting things like everything happens for a reason is because when I'm using social media platforms, I'm assuming there are people that, first of all, that I don't know. There's a lot of people that I don't know personally. And chances are when you get big groups of people together, you're going to have at least a few who are really suffering. And suffering, I mean, in a way that, would bring any of us to our knees, that kind of suffering. And I was writing about, and I didn't even used to be able to write about it or talk about it, but my one of the cousins, I grew up with 4 of my cousins, and one of them, very close to all of them, they're really more like siblings to me than cousins. And even though after my parents split, I saw them a lot less than I had the first 4 years of my life, I'm still incredibly close to these people. I love them. And one of my cousins lost his son to brain cancer, and it was horrific. He was 6 years old, and it was, I still can't really, talk about this without crying, because it was just so devastating. And I watched it happen, and to tell someone who is watching their tiny child suffer that it's happening for a reason, even if you believe that, even if for you that's what makes sense and that's how life works, it lacks compassion, even if you mean well, because the person that you're speaking to may not believe that, may not believe that there's reincarnation and karmic debt and everything is going to make sense in the end. That might not be a belief system that is meaningful to them at all. And so now you're just telling someone who doesn't share a belief system with you that this horrifying tragedy that is befalling them is happening for a reason. It's just not, it's not it, And so I think when you've been up close to something like that and you've seen someone go through something like that, you realize that those little sayings that you can wrap up in a bow, they might sound good and they make a nice meme or whatever, but they can be incredibly painful for someone if they're reading that while they're going through something that they're just trying to figure out, how do I get through this, and how do I live through this, and how do I keep breathing here? And so that, and for me personally, having said all of that, I just do not. I look at the world, and I don't. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not amazed that we're on a spinning planet, in a solar system, in a vast universe, and with a sun that is like 93 million miles away from us, powering. It's never lost on me. And there are times where I'm walking my dog and I see a flower and I can't believe how sort of intricate it is, like you just stop and look at the colors and look at what's happening there. Or I don't know if you've ever been scuba diving, but the first time I went scuba diving, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It's just like an entire other world is happening underneath the surface of the ocean that is mind-blowing and mind-boggling. So when I see things like that, I feel like this is incredible. And it does give me that sense of there's something amazing happening here that we are not even, it's unfathomable. We really can't wrap our heads or wrap our arms around what is happening. And I feel so grateful to get to be here and to get to experience just being a human being and being on this planet and seeing all of this awe-inspiring beauty. It's wild. So that none of that is lost on me. And there have been times in my life when I have prayed for signs. Who I'm praying to is, it's certainly in question, but we've all reached those desperate moments, I think, in our lives where we're just praying for help from somewhere or signs from somewhere or something. And I've certainly been there in my life. And then things have happened that are really hard to explain. They're really hard to explain away. So it's not like I don't have respect for the inexplicable things that happen, or that I'm not open to the idea that there is some creative force behind all of this, call it what you will. But I don't believe in an angry white dude in the sky in robes. I don't believe in that. Not that angry sort of smiting, guy with a ledger who's kind of like somehow paying attention to 8 billion people's innermost thoughts and keeping track of all the impure ones and paying attention to who's loving whom and who's like, that does not, all the beauty I just described and then a vengeful angry God, those things don't fit for me. Maybe they fit for you. I have people in my family who feel very differently about all this stuff than I do. And I see the division it creates, but everyone's got to sort of piece this thing together in their own way. So I make no judgment on any of it except where it's hurting other people. If your spiritual practice or your religion is harmful to other people, then I have a problem, because it's just those two things really shouldn't coexist. Spiritual practice, I think, should be about helping us all be more tolerant and loving and compassionate and also humble, to really humble yourself and recognize this is so wild what's happening. How could I think I've got all the answers or I have everything figured out? To at least leave some room for humility that maybe what I think is happening isn't what's happening. I mean, I certainly am saying that to you. I don't know. I would never pretend to know that I've got this all figured out, or I know what all the answers are, or I know what happens when we die. I don't know. We could exhale for the final time and that's it. Game over. Or, there's, of course, even if that were the case, even if we exhale for the final time and that's it, still energy doesn't die, it changes form. It changes form. So maybe we go back into the earth and we become part of what is feeding the trees and the birds and the, plants. And I mean, maybe we become part of that energy. Whatever it is, we're not just like, that's it, it's over, we don't exist anymore. We just exist in another form, But I'm not going to pretend to know anything beyond that, what I just said, that energy changes form. I can say, I was also it was on my mind yesterday that when my kids were really little, I was deep in the throes of single motherhood. We had this pediatrician, Edward Malphus, and he was absolutely like a godsend of a pediatrician. And he had been with us from the time my kids were tiny, and he was the pediatrician who came and examined my daughter when she was born. He was just with us, from that time forward. And I went in there one day. I think the kids were probably like 3 and 5, and the three of us had the flu, and I had a fever, and I was like in my chest. It was really bad, and the kids were, it was bad. And I sat down on the bench in the exam room, and he was examining the kids, and he looked at me and he said, are you going to go to the doctor too? And I said, oh, I'll be fine. And he said, you don't look great. You look pale, and I think you need to be seen. And I said, well, okay, if I don't get better in the next few days, I will. So we leave, and the next day he calls, and I'm going to start crying. And I answer, and I said, oh, I start telling him about how the kids are doing. And he stops me and he says, I was calling to check on you. And to me, that's it. That's a spiritual practice right there that actually is meaningful, is seeing people. Like, he saw me, he saw me in the exam room, and he saw that I was exhausted and not worrying about myself, that I was totally focused on the kids, and that I probably wasn't going to go to the doctor. And he called me the next day, and he was a busy pediatrician. That to me is a spiritual practice that's meaningful. Caring about other people and noticing, and not missing it when someone could use a little kindness, a little caring. And he's still alive for me in my thoughts. What happened after that is several years later, the kids were older, and I was on the phone with him about one of the kids, and he told me that he had cancer and that it wasn't looking good. And he had tried all kinds of different experimental things, and he kind of had one last thing to try, but it wasn't looking good. And I started weeping on the phone because he had been there with me from the beginning with my kids, And when you're a single mom and you have a pediatrician like that, it is like, it's just invaluable. And I just relied on him, and I loved him, and he was such a wonderful person. And so I just started weeping, and I couldn't help it. I didn't want to do that because I felt like he's the one who has cancer, he's the one who's dying, and I don't want to make him take care of me right now. I want to try to take care of him, but I just couldn't. I was overcome with emotion. I was driving down Lincoln Boulevard, and I just said to him, I have to tell you, you have been amazing. Like, I hope that you pull through this, and I hope that it's going to be okay, but whatever happens, like, I just really love you, like, you've been amazing to me and my kids. And I'm sharing this with you because he is still alive in my thoughts and in my heart. So even if you exhale for the final time and that's it, you still live on, and those little things that you do that you might think they don't matter, they matter. Like that phone call he made, I'll never forget that in my entire life. And so you can know that, you can rest easy that those small acts of kindness are actually not so small. And those are the things that are going to live on for people long after you are not here. So, whatever else you might believe on top of that, you can know that. And with my mom, I feel her around me and inside, like in my head, like I feel her with me all the time now. I didn't for the first 9 months or so. I think I was so deep in my grief that I didn't feel that. I wanted to desperately, but I wasn't. I wanted to know she was somewhere okay. I wanted to feel like her presence somehow, somewhere, aside from just memories. And at the 9 month mark, I'm not going to talk about this too much because I'm not ready to talk about it too much, but I had a really vivid dream. I had been hoping like that she would show up in a dream because I couldn't think of any other way that I could maybe like actually have some feeling of connecting with her. And it happened, and some other things happened that are really they're really hard to explain away. And that's something I'm writing about in the memoir. But I can feel that I can't even talk about that yet. So it's not that I definitely believe that there are mysteries here that we are just not, we're not capable of grasping. But I don't like these trite little sayings that make people feel worse when they're already suffering. And everything happens for a reason is one of them, and so is things don't happen to you, they happen for you. I mean, tell that to a grieving parent who just lost their tiny child. Like, that's just not, unless you believe in reincarnation and the evolution of the soul, that's not going to be comforting at all. Even if you mean really well and you're trying to be comforting, it's not going to be. Or, rejection is protection is one that's like less awful, but it's kind of one of those where like, let's just make everything, let's make everything make sense. Sometimes rejection is protection and you dodged a bullet, and sometimes it just sucks. Like it doesn't all have to, you don't have to, you're never going to be able to wrap up all of the painful things that happen in life in a neat little bow, and you make yourself sick if you try. It's much better just to understand that if we're really lucky, we're all going to experience incredible love and joy and, just adventures and twists and turns that we didn't see coming, we wouldn't have even known to hope for, that are amazing. And we're also going to experience the flip side of all of that. Enormous loss, heartbreak, rejection, confusion, fear. Like we're gonna, we're gonna experience the whole realm, spectrum of emotions and experiences, and that's just called life. And you don't have to jam it all into, the thank you column. But what you can hopefully do is take the most painful things that happen and make meaning. You make the meaning. I linked to a bunch of things in the personal essay. There's this Amy Schumer, if you haven't seen it, it's all about the universe. And I get a lot of that on my feeds because, again, I'm a yoga teacher. I've been in the spiritual community and the wellness world for 30 years. So I call my feed, I mute, I use the mute button a lot. Because there's just a lot of this, like the universe put this in my path, or I'm, and it's just like the universe, is probably not worrying about whether you get sun on your wedding day. And if a bird, craps on you, the bird crapped on you. You just kind of walked under the bird at the wrong moment. You don't have to be like, oh, it's good luck. It's like, well, it doesn't feel like good luck. It feels like I have to go home now and change and hope it didn't like get in my hair. We don't have to sort of do this to ourselves. You can just kind of take the great stuff and celebrate it, and take the painful stuff and like let yourself feel those feelings or ask for help when you need it, which I know, believe me, from my own personal experience, like that can be really hard to do. But you don't have to try to make everything make sense because it's too wild for that. Life, being a human being, a tiny, like one person of around 8 billion people on one planet in one solar system. It's like, it's so tiny and you're here for such a snap of time. It's like, you're not going to get it figured all out. People have been trying to figure it out since the beginning of time. And, we make incremental discoveries as we go. Like, it's okay. It doesn't all have to make sense. And I think that you probably find a lot of freedom and a lot of spiritual growth when you let go of the idea that you have to do that, and you just sort of say to yourself, it's plenty of work for me just to try to live on this planet and be the best possible person I can be. I definitely don't need to, spend any time or energy trying to manage what other people are doing or how they're being or what they want or who they're loving. I don't need to get involved in that. That's for them to figure out. I have enough work just to figure my own stuff out and to try to keep showing up every day with awe, like not to stop seeing how amazing this is just to be here, even if we are making a giant mess of it right now on planet Earth, which I think we can agree, I hope we can agree we certainly are. It's still incredible to be here. It's still wild to be here. I would not want to miss it. I get up every day and sometimes I'm like holding my head and horrified and devastated. And sometimes I'm amazed and like laughing because someone's so funny or so talented or so interesting, or I just saw something that I can't even believe I'm looking at, a flower or a creature, or I read something, or there's a piece of music. Like there's so much to be amazed by. And then you have human beings who are so fascinating. And, it's like, it's great if you can just ride the ride and open to it and mind your own, whatever your own spiritual practices are that kind of keep you grounded and keep you paying attention and keep you showing up with love. Those are great, but the rest of it, I don't know, just put a healthy dose of like, maybe I don't need to grip onto that stuff so tightly, or maybe I don't need to be so positive that I have everything figured out, because there's a chance that I'm kind of like not just forcing every life experience I have into these tiny little columns and boxes, but I'm also forcing myself into one of those. And I don't really think you're going to experience the fullness of life in that way. So, I hope this has been meaningful, and I'm of course always open for conversation. It is not my intention to alienate anyone or be disrespectful to your beliefs, whatever they might be. I'm just sharing my own. I think these things are good to talk about because we do all know that we have an expiration date, and sometimes, especially in our culture in the United States, we kind of like push that under the rug. Like, we don't like to think about our own vulnerability or our own mortality. We don't talk about death. But we all know that we don't live for like 800 years. Like, we know that we have a certain amount of time. It isn't a lot of time. And I think the more that we talk about it and sort of at least ask ourselves, well, what do I think is happening? What do I think this is all about? Because then it gives you inspiration for how you want to be living. So I will just end by saying, I personally think the best stuff we get here while we're here is connection, right? And I don't just mean connection with other people, although for me that's like the top, like just having real, genuine love and understanding, and to feel like you're really seeing someone, and or that you're really being seen, or to really cherish someone, and to have that thing where you look at someone and a whole conversation can happen between you without words. I love that. I think that's just incredible. Or to be able to be there for people when they're hurting, or to celebrate with them when they're winning. Like, I love all that stuff. And, you know, the people that are the close people in my life, I just like, I cherish them at the top of the top of the top. You know, I just can't believe how lucky I am to have so many amazing people in my life and such a beautiful community and all these different ways to connect. So that for me is what I think. And the story I was telling about our pediatrician, like, it doesn't get better than that. You know, he lived life in such a beautiful way, and he did a lot of volunteering. And I mean, he really, in my worldview, he got it as right as you can get it. And he's up there with like Fred Rogers, who I was also writing about. You know, if somebody wanted to start a religion and make Fred Rogers God, I could probably get behind that pretty easily, because that guy also, he had it down, you know. You get to look around and see who's living in a way that feels really inspiring to you, and those are the people to like pay attention to, you know. Yeah, I don't know, went off on a tangent there, but that's really what that's what I'm looking for, is like connection, and then also noticing that what is around you. Like paying attention to me is the religion, right? Paying attention and letting yourself feel the awe of what is around you and the people in your life, and also the planet, you know, and the planet itself and all the different creatures on this planet and flowers and life in the ocean, and then around this planet, you know, like there's just so much. There's no shortage of things to blow your mind. And to me, that is the best spiritual practice, is like making sure you're paying attention to all those things every day. And I think that's why I love yoga, because it's all about paying attention from moment to moment. So again, I hope this was helpful. Certainly not my intention to alienate anyone. Whatever your spiritual practices are, whatever your beliefs are, you know, everyone is welcome. I just think it's good for you to know where I'm coming from. If you're gonna be here with me, right? If we're gonna be traveling together, that's really all this is. And I do hope that it was helpful. Until next time.